If anyone is going to offer to make you the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, you're going to take it. But the reality is that those things are not in a vacuum, right? I mean, there is a robbing from Peter to pay Paul element of this, and all these teams have to take that into account.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously there's only so much money to go around, but I will say this, okay? If you have a franchise quarterback, I would much rather secure that position and really rely on my ability to identify, draft, and develop players around him than to constantly be on that hamster wheel trying to look for another quarterback to replace the one that had just let go down the road because he got too expensive. I think it's much easier to build out the rest of the roster than to try and find that franchise quarterback. And in many of those situations that you just referred to right there, whether it be with guys like Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco, in many of those situations, it wasn't necessarily a lack of money going around available to go around to the other players that contributed to their teams not having the kind of success that they need to. A lot of times, look, football is a game that is just littered with nuance, and and really just sometimes luck plays a big part of it too, as far as how successful organizations can be. And you deal with a lot of things, whether it be bad coaching decisions, injuries, bad strategic decisions, during the course of a football game. A lot of those things come into play when you're looking at whether or not organizations that pay franchise quarterbacks are then ultimately able to be successful. We're going to see it happen again in the next, maybe 6 to 12 months with Pat Mahomes. Obviously, Kansas City is very much so aware of the fact that Pat could really tell them, I'm going to name my price and you're going to hit my price regardless of what it does to the rest of the football team. They're very much so aware that he could possibly do that to them, but they are also trying to stress to him the fact that, look, there are other players that we need to have around you if we want to continue to win Super Bowls. And I think the teams are always trying to strike that delicate balance, but I will say this. I'm not one of those guys who believes that you just cannot win because you paid a franchise quarterback. I think it, without a doubt, is an overall organizational effort. It's something that you have to make sure that your organization is locked up airtight in terms of coaching, player procurement, player development, player nutrition, making sure player rehab, keeping players healthy, using them in the proper way. I think all those things come into play, but I would much rather have that position solidified than not.
Of course. Me too. And maybe the best way to look at this is something that Orlovsky said on the show a long time ago, which is the place you really get in trouble is when you start paying good players great player money. So no one in their right mind is going to argue with paying Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. But without meaning disrespect to them, when Joe Flacco and Derek Carr wind up in that situation because they're just the next ones in line, that's where teams get themselves in trouble.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think sometimes, look, obviously quarterbacks benefit from that phenomena, okay? The guys who are starters are always waiting for, hey, man, I just can't wait for my contract to come up because I know I'm going to get paid whether I deserve it or not, whether I'm in the category of the elite players or not. And I think teams, contract negotiators in particular, have to be very careful with that, and they have to be mindful of that. And there has to come a point in time where you draw a line in the sand and say, hey, look, we're already paying you much more than subjectively we think you deserve, but we're not going to go any further because you know that that player is not able to make up for the difference that you will suffer in terms of not being able to sign some other players, like a Pat Mahomes could make up that difference, and Kansas City is fully aware that he can. Like Aaron Rodgers can make up that difference, or he could at one point in time in his career, and they're fully aware of that in Green Bay. There's no question you have to be aware of that. There's no question you have to be conscious of that. But if you have one of the very best, don't ever let him get away.
For sure. That's why I keep saying they should have a separate salary cap just for the quarterbacks. Like most geniuses, I won't be fully appreciated until long after my time.